That kind of mentality is going to turn you into a game developer.
I mean, I am a game. Sorry, did you guys not know I
Oh,
am a
excuse
game
me.
developer?
Are
So,
we recording that?
so here's the fun.
Yes, and it's gonna be at the top of the show. Welcome everybody to another special episode of the Cute Games Club. I am your host, Terry Ross, and 5 minutes ago I was trying to install an air conditioner. But now I am here with an awesome community that I just happened to discover truly by accident. The YouTube algorithm was good to me on one fine day, and I found this thing called Paper Direct, I think it was called. I think it's
No, that's right.
Paper Direct? Okay, cool, thank you. And it's basically just a showcase of indies who are making RPGs and other similar games to the Paper Mario series and the Mario RPG series. And in my mind, I never would have thought that this was a genre, but apparently there is a now growing community of people who like the games and want to make more games like that, and it's just absolutely fascinating to me. So I reached out to the mods, and they agreed to all sit down with me and talk about it. So I would love for you guys to just introduce yourselves if you would.
I'm Chris. I was the one who originally made the Paperverse Twitter account, which then evolved into the Discord and the whole like community of developers who like come together and like make cool stuff.
Hello, I'm River. Uh, I was also here when Chris wanted to make.
I needed a mod.
Yeah, he needed someone to help, and I was like, no. And then I did it anyway, and here we are 2 years later, and I've been moderating and hanging out ever since.
All right, hello. I am Mantis, and I used to be just a developer partnered with the server. I joined day one because I love Paper Mario, and a few months later, I was modded. After that, we kind of just made the direct, and now we're here.
So you helped make the direct specifically,
Yes.
with the compilation and everything. Okay, cool, sick.
I have a lot to say about that, but I'll save it for later.
No, absolutely. We're going to get into it, no doubt.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jeeves. I'm the developer for Sales from Alteria. And like Charlie, I also joined as a development partner day one, and a few months later was modded to help run Paperverse as well. And I know we'll get into it later, but specifically, I focus on like video content, well, for the YouTube channel and developer partner outreach. So very, very fun stuff.
Yeah, I would actually love to start though, just kind of as a way to get everyone into it. Just tell us about something you've been playing lately.
I've been playing, or rather replaying, Mario and Luigi Dream Team for the 3DS because it's been a long time since I've played that game. I think the last time I played it was on launch, and I remember really liking it. So I was like, I should go back to see if I still feel the same way about it. And turns out I do. It's a good time.
Well, that's fantastic. I was honestly not expecting anybody. Well, I don't know. I was like, are people in Paperverse playing the RPGs like actively, or is it just we played them when they came out and it's just like a passionate thing? But no, you're actually replaying them, which is kind of awesome to hear.
I have been playing Mario RPG 7 Stars, which has been surprisingly interesting.
Yeah, actually, I tried to do some homework for this interview basically, and I was looking at like the whole range of the RPGs, and it's crazy to me because like the first one is the only one that honestly feels like a true, and we're gonna get into the differences like later on in the interview, but it's so crazy that just like a really well made but just like basically classic RPG just kind of became the offshoot for, I mean, basically this community. So
yeah, it's interesting to play because it very much feels like a prototype for what the rest of the Mario and Luigi RPGs, paper or not, were.
Yeah.
Like it has an inkling of that personality, but it never dives into the deep end with it. It just kind of gives you a taste.
Did anybody else play anything of mention? If you didn't play anything recently, totally understandable. For a person who loves video games as much as I do, I play a surprising low amount of them in my adulthood.
That's very fair.
I feel that, yeah.
I feel like a lot of the time I spend more time thinking about games than actually playing them.
Oh, big same.
I watch a ton of games on YouTube. Other people, they'll like stream the games, and I like watch or like commentate over them. So like Carrot Dev in the audience, Richter, he's been playing a lot of games on stream, and currently we're playing through the original Paper Mario because I'd never seen it, and he was like, "How? Like you run a Paperverse server?" So
There's
we
a lot
started
of games in
playing
this.
it.
No shame, no shame.
There
There's
are.
so many of them.
I really want to quickly go back to what Mantis was saying, because they were on basically the perfect segue into what I wanted to ask first, is just kind of breaking down what is so distinctive about the Paper Mario RPG series. I think most of us listening know what a traditional, I'm going to say like JRPG kind of looks and feels like. You know, there's a lot of options. It's like a lot of menu sorting. There's a little bit of grind, some leveling up, and there are a lot of those elements in the Paper Mario RPGs. But I would love to know what it is about these RPGs that are distinct, like distinct enough to be their own genre now, because now indies are making their own games, like a paper-like.
Well, I'm cool starting off on this, but I would like Jeeves and the others to have some thoughts on it as well.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
I think the beautiful thing about Paper Mario specifically, and I know the other RPGs are also lumped into there, is you're seeing a different side of the Mario series. Usually you see these characters as simply enemies who never talk or do anything interesting, and then you bring them into the Paper Mario world, and it's this sudden expansion of these things that you thought you had known. So like Thousand Year Door, you have Rogueport, which is just this like kind of slimy city of like enemies that you've seen throughout the game, and you can talk to them, and all of them have like complex stories. And I think that's what drew it to me so much, is it's got a lot of personality to it. The recipe for Mario RPGs is pretty simple. You usually have your hub world with the different areas you explore, and your collectibles, like the 7 stars and the crystal stars for Thousand Year Door, etc. But for me, it's really getting to travel and see the Mario series in a new light. And I think paper likes tend to want to bring that exploration or kind of whimsy to their own indie style of it. And it's a little different because obviously you don't have that Mario genre to build off of, but so many games here have that attention to detail aspect to them, and I think that's a very important thing for the genre.
Yeah, I really concur with pretty much all of that. Attention to detail part, especially. Like you said, we don't have the Mario license to build off of when making our games, so we have to capture that feeling in other ways. And a video I'm working on right now, one of the points I brought up when it comes to like why the Paperverse itself is so varied, and we have so many different subgenres like platformers and puzzle games and beat 'em ups. The reason that we have all of that but still have design language that stems from Paper Mario, in and of itself, a Mario RPG is rather simple, and like the template is pretty much laid out for you to make a facsimile thereof. I guess I'll use Kulabra Souls Limbo as a pretty good example. You can immediately tell where the Paper Mario influence kind of stems from, especially like in the papercraft aesthetic, how the characters move, how they speak. But like the big departure for that game is that there's no traditional turn-based combat. It's all a narrative-focused experience, and like that's just one example out of like the 30 or 40 so games we have in the Paperverse. And that's, yes, it's all inspired by Paper Mario, but you can take bits and pieces from those games and craft a wholly unique experience from them.
And speaking of the combat, that to me is one of the big things that differentiates like Paper Mario or just Mario RPGs in general from like other RPGs that were being made at the time, is there is something like intrinsically more like immersive about like actually having to hold back your analog stick in order to like land a hit with your hammer, and like timing your button presses to like Mario's jumps. Or like one of my like favorite examples is like flicking the analog stick back and forth with a flurry in Thousand Year Door, where it's like, how would you simulate like a wind motion on a controller? It's like that's like one of the closest things I could think of to do that.
Yeah.
And it just makes the whole thing like I said immersive a lot, but it just makes it feel a lot more
cohesive.
Like yes, thank you.
Yeah, I think the action commands really is like, there's a reason that so many of the games around here really do focus on that action command aspect of it, where it's like, it's a marriage of the idea of the RPG, where it's a more complex battle system of like selecting through menus and trying to strategize, but it also combines the very basic idea of what Mario is, where it's like you have to hold right and jump and try to get to the end. and it's sort of like you have to physically do something in order to achieve those menu actions. It's so much more interactive than just flicking through a menu, and so much more complex than just holding right and jumping.
Well, so on that note, we have basically these ingredients of, you know, what makes a Mario, a Paper Mario like, a paper like. And my first introduction to people starting to make their own games like this was Bug Fables. I think that was kind of the big one that was on the scene for like a really, really long time. And correct me if I'm wrong, if there was maybe another one out there that I haven't heard of.
Before that, there was a game called Underhero,
Okay.
which definitely it has like a smaller like following than Bug Fables, definitely because Bug Fables like exploded. But Underhero is the first time I saw like an indie game take a lot of direct inspiration from Paper Mario.
Well, how did you feel when you started to see other people start doing this? Was it exciting? I know that like a lot of people were kind of feeling maybe they started to lose interest. I think in the Paper Mario games towards like the last three games. This is just what I've heard on like YouTube and stuff. So I mean, you guys might still love all of them. I know that I loved Origami King. So was it like getting kind of an expansion of what you were used to, or just something different altogether?
Just saying the word Origami King has made people in chat start typing already.
I love
Multiple people are typing. Yeah, that sums up my experience with recent Paper Mario games very well. Something that I do think is interesting about Origami King, and something I struggle with as a developer who's making a game with combat but no experience points, is you pretty much have to fight if you want to 100% the game, which I think is interesting because I like the currency of confetti. It has almost no bearing on the game aside from the 100% completion, but it just feels nice to use. So I think it's interesting that they not only tied in coins, but also had like, hey, you can 100% the game and get more of this currency if you fight. So I don't know. I know it's a very divisive game, but it is interesting to me how they try to incentivize players in that way.
Yeah, you could definitely tell with Origami King they might have heard some of the feedback from the past two games, and they were trying to say, all right, well, we're not really going to go backwards, but if we're going forward, we're going to maybe try things in like a different direction.
I was just going to say, I think you see that pattern in just like a lot of like indie developers in general, or if there's like a lack of a certain genre or even a specific type of game, like in its absence, you'll see a lot of like indie developers take that like template that the game made and expand on it. One of the most prominent examples is like the explosion of like 3D platformer indies recently.
Yeah, I mean, now that you mention it, there's a possibility that they could be related. I mean, you know, I've certainly had that feeling where if I'm, again, I liked the later Paper Mario games, but if I'm a developer and I'm seeing this genre that I really enjoy, maybe not get the attention or even get enough games released, you know, in it, you know, my first thought is going to be like, well, I could just make it myself. So
Right.
If there's a want for something, specifically if it's like a game or like a certain kind of game, there are going to be people who are going to fill that void, and I think that's what's been happening with like Mario RPGs. One of the things that I am not a huge fan of in the modern Paper Mario games is that there's just not a whole reason to like actually engage with the systems the game has made. So you're just kind of like you're missing out on a pivotal experience of that game because it doesn't really give you anything as a player.
On that note, Mantis and Jeeves, you guys are developers, and we've been having this conversation essentially about, you know, what we like and we don't like about Paper Mario games and things that we are able to make ourselves, which is, you know, our own games. What has your reaction been to, you know, the recent games and how it influenced what you're making now?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. I guess I'll start off.
Please.
So it's funny that like Charlie and I are both like devs inspired by Paper Mario, but we take like wildly different approaches to it.
We do.
I'm a little bit more straight edge when it comes to the Paperverse spectrum. You can pretty much divide all the devs up into groups. You've got one group with like the flat 2D guys running around in a 3D world, and that's me over there. Then you have like everybody else like who doesn't capture that aesthetic, but they understand the mechanics of Paper Mario and like what essentially it is, and they capture that through rock solid gameplay, which is really really impressive to do if you're not relying on the aesthetic. But specifically for me, to get back around to the question, I'd say elements from the later games, battles not really holding any gravity to the situation or to the world's story and narrative. That's one thing I don't really care too much for. You don't have to battle, and that's like one of my favorite parts of Paper Mario. Like especially the first two was combat is really really fun and it holds weight. You know, it makes sense while you're battling. It doesn't feel like you're wasting your time, and you want to go out and find more encounters. At least I did playing those two games. After a certain point in Origami King, I was just really really fatigued, and that's one thing I've been like focusing on my game is okay. I want to keep combat not only fresh and engaging, but still have weight from the first time you start playing to like the final boss, and even after the post game, you know. And it's a bit of a challenge, I would say, especially for a small team, really capturing what makes turn-based combat and action commands fun to pull off. You know, there's a lot of things that go into it: sound design, impact on the animations, timing of the attacks themselves. It's a whole thing, but I would say that's like really what's been pushing me in my developer vision from Paper Mario. Really, really combat.
Yeah, your guys's I've looked at Jeeves' game and Mantis's game, and you can absolutely tell that there are differences in the approach. And Mantis, I would love to hear kind of what your take has been.
So for the recent games, I believe this is the first time I've actually said this here, but I have not played most of them. I was raised on Thousand Year Door, which is a game that I adore very greatly. It just feels darn good to play. And I think, honestly, that's some of the best turn-based combat out there when it comes to games in general. Now, my approach with game development, I'm an artist by trade. I do have a degree in game design, but I focus much more on the artistic and production side of it, which is why I'm a mod here, but that's aside from the point. I wanted to focus more on, I guess, the emotional side of Paper Mario, and I don't take a lot of the visual cues from it, but I do have this bustling community in life, like where you can talk to anyone and they'll have a story that's a thread you can follow throughout the game. And I really wanted to emphasize that bit. And, you know, even just in the name Lifelike, I want it to be an experience that feels very real and immersive. When it comes to combat, I did take a lot from Thousand Year Door's star power system, which is when you have enough cheers from the audience, you can then enable these special attacks which use the crystal stars. Now, I don't have an audience in Lifelike, but I did base most of the action commands off of those star power moves, which are not physical, but like they're active. They take up the whole screen. There's a lot of activity going on. I also like really, really enjoyed the blocking system just because it feels so good to do. And I decided to change that up a little bit. It's now a currency in Lifelike. You have different amount of blocks per character because, you know, some are stronger than others, and you can block if you want, or, you know, spend some more to send it back and damage your enemy. So it's a little bit more thought there on the player's end.
Oh, I like that. Oh, that's okay. I'm excited to see that in practice.
But it is interesting developing a game with Paper Mario inspiration that doesn't outright look like Paper Mario. I've had like one or two people say, "Oh my gosh, this looks like Thousand Year Door," and I'm like, "Yes, thank you, you understand." But I sometimes I feel like, you know, do I belong here with this game? And I'm like, no, wait, I do. I totally used Thousand Year Door's design for what I'm doing here. So it's interesting. There are definitely many games here that aren't outright visibly inspired, but once you get into it, it's like, oh, I feel it.
I also think it like helps illustrate the point that like if you are gonna go to like into Paperverse expecting like a carbon copy of like Paper Mario, you're not really gonna find that here. Well, all the developers here like take inspiration from like different aspects. It's not necessarily gonna be like a one-to-one copy because we're like everybody here is like trying to like either add on to the like a formula that clearly a lot of people really like, or are messing around with it in ways that like you wouldn't really expect.
I wanted to bring up something that Jeeves had said earlier about how he thinks of a lot of paper games in sort of two camps. And I think I do the same thing, but with different categories, where it's like the people that are here typically will fall into the category of like programmers or artists. And obviously everyone is both, but I think that a lot of people here will fall into the two camps of like, I'm trying to make Paper Mario, but I'm going to get so into the development part of it. I'm going to make better Paper Mario. I'm going to make something cooler. I'm going to come up with some mechanic that is just going to blow everyone out of the water. And then there's this other aspect of it that's like, I'm going to tell a story that will shock the world. And I think that's more of the artist side of it. It's just people, the way that their brains work, you can see these two sort of sides of people in Paperverse, and they marry pretty well around the Paper Mario sort of style, just because that game itself is like very mechanically interesting, where like it combines like the RPG menu system along with action commands, and it's all very technically impressive, but it's also a story about a silent protagonist and a world full of cute things, and they each have their own lives and things they want to say, and it's a whole world that's going to touch people's hearts. And it's like the different ways that people focus on that around here is really interesting to see once people like show things off. It's like it's just so cool how much you can learn from a person by their paper game.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really cool that Paper Mario really has kind of an arm in both camps. So it's kind of cool to see that there's developers. I'm really stoked that we literally have like two different kinds of these developers, like you were saying, River, in the interview today, so we can kind of get different perspectives on it. Well, I think the next topic that I would really love to talk about, since that was kind of where we were edging up against, is, the Paperverse community. How did this sort of community start? What was, like, I think, Chris, you said you were the first person to the inventor, if you will?
I wouldn't say inventor. It's kind of like, you know how squirrels accidentally bury like nuts and then they forget where they buried it and then a tree sprouts? That's what Paperverse is.
Perfect analogy
really
for it.
What a weird
Yeah.
It really is. That's exactly how it
so
happened.
what was the planting and then forgetting part? What was that like?
It started as a Twitter account where I was like just keeping track of a bunch of like for lack of a better word, paper games that were being developed, and I mostly did it just so I could like have a place for me to keep track of all of these games.
Yeah. Well, I was wondering, how did you find these games in the first place?
That's a good question. I found like a lot of them from a Reddit thread on Paper Mario in like 2016. But I found that list and I was like, I was following all their Twitter accounts. And eventually, like, along with like all the other accounts I followed up, I'm like, it's getting hard to keep track of just these games. So I'm gonna make a Twitter account specifically to track them by themselves without like other stuff in my feed. And while doing that, I'm like, I could also like use this opportunity to like, like if anybody else is interested in keeping up with like all these updates in one place, that Twitter account will also serve that purpose. So that's how originally it was called Paper Games Palace, because I am not good at coming up with names. And I made the logo in like Photoshop for like 5 minutes, and then I'm like, that looks professional enough. And it was never meant to be anything other than a Twitter account until a friend of the community who goes by Mustard Online. He runs a community somewhat similar to ours called Unique Indie RPGs. Mustard contacted me through Twitter and was like, "Hey, it would be a good idea if you made a Discord, because like that way you could more easily achieve your goal of like trying to promote these games, because if there's like active discussion around them, that will be a net positive for both like developers and people who are actually making it." So I'm like, cool. So I enlisted the help. I'm like, hey, River, can you help me with something? And they were like, yeah. No, I won't. And then I was like, can you please? And then they're like, yes. So that's how the Discord started. And I didn't really intend for it. I don't think anybody really intended it to become like a super big thing. For the most part, I just kind of thought it would be a place where people would like discuss games that were coming out. And like, if I'm being like truthfully honest, I thought it would like fizzle out in like maybe a few months. but then actual developers are joining, and I was like, what? What's happening? And they're like, hey, we think what you're doing is cool, and we want to help around here. I'm like, is this real? So what was meant to be just for me a place to keep track of all these games turned into like a pretty sizable community of like actual like game developers who like use this as a platform to promote their stuff and to just like contact other developers, because one of the best things about Paperverse is that like developers of games with a lot of the same inspiration can like actually communicate with each other and exchange ideas and ask each other for help on like programming stuff. And to me, that is so cool that we're able to provide a space like that.
River, please, I was gonna ask kind of, I mean, as a mod and you definitely, it sounds like we're had your hands in the Discord a lot more at first, so I would love to hear kind of what you were seeing.
Yeah, to go back to the very, very beginning, Chris and I have been friends since high school, so we've known each other for a while at this point. And he was saying that he wanted to do this Discord with the help of Mustard. And I was like, that requires like dedication and effort. Are you sure you're gonna be able to do that while also dealing with school? You know, a valid concern. And he's like, yeah, it'll be fine. This is something I want to do. And I was like, I don't know. And then he was like, you don't even need to do anything. Just pretend to be a moderator.
I forgot I said that. I was like, you just need to have the symbol that people will be afraid of you.
Yeah, like the image of like a police officer standing there with a nightstick, but I don't know how to use it. So Chris made the Discord, and I was there with my nightstick doing nothing. And because I can't help myself, I started interacting with people. I started meeting really cool people.
River is really the reason why this community like still exists and like actually became something, because the part where they were talking about like, hey, you should worry about school, spoiler alert, school kicked my ass, and I was not in a very great spot. So while I was like dealing with my own personal issues, I kind of took a step back from Paperverse for like a year, and River was like, along with like Charlie and Jeeve, were the ones who like were like, okay, we're gonna keep this like thing afloat because this is a really cool thing we have going here. And not only did they like keep it afloat, but they like made a goddamn professional looking video presentation.
Oh, we're going to talk about that. Do not worry.
Oh yeah,
we're gonna get into it.
So to go back to the analogy of the acorn, Chris planted it in the dirt, and I had to water it for a little while, keeping the place alive.
I do quickly want to talk about like how developers specifically found this, you know, like how developers were joining this leading up to the point of, you know, like the first Paper Direct.
I think we have the same origin story, Jeeve. I'm a transplant from Unique Indie RPGs. I'm also partnered there, but I am more active here nowadays. And came day one when Mustard was like, hey, there's this new community. I like Paper Mario, so I just kind of came over here.
Yeah, it's literally the exact same story. Also transplant from Unique Indie RPG. I'm partner there as well, and I saw the announcement, and I was like, oh snap! I am Paper Mario. I need to be over there. So we came over, and for a while, it was pretty quiet community. It wasn't like a lot going on. I mean, a little activity, but it was early days, and we had like your locals and everything, and that was just it. It was just us, you know, chatting around, talking about our games and whatnot. Wasn't busy at all. Things didn't start picking up until we decided we didn't first decide to like do a direct. The first thing we decided to come together and do was like, hey, we should do like we call it a cork board, but essentially it's like a political compass that has like all of the games on it and how much they're inspired by Paper Mario. We don't do it anymore. This was way back, but yeah, that was like the first thing we were doing. And we're like, oh yeah, this is kind of cool. All the devs were coming together. We were pitching our ideas. You know, we were like, you know, we can do this, make it look like this. Ask these guys if they want to be on it. And that was kind of the birth of that collaborative environment we had. You know, very, very baby steps, very small. Let's just worry about getting an image out on Twitter. It was kind of a lot of work back then, you know, because it was all new. You know, we were all just figuring it out while also trying to develop games ourselves. But yeah, that's kind of how that actually started. And then, you know, we didn't come on as mods until a couple months later.
We did not. Yeah. I was relatively inactive because I was like, well, I don't know if I'm like Paper Mario enough, but I guess I'll be here. And I was given a channel and I was like, okay, like, thank you. I'm glad you trust me. And it was January of 2021 when someone said the word direct, and I just like appeared and I was like, oh my god, project.
Yeah, and that's where sort of, because people had been like wanting community, and people kept bringing up the idea of the direct, and I just had to be like, oh no, like I don't know, it's not really gonna happen. I don't know, like we can keep thinking about it and it'll be cool, but it's like a pipe dream. And then people were getting more and more serious until eventually I had to just say, like, I can't do this, not by myself. And so Jeev and Charlie both step to actually do the thing that I
Quote
couldn't.
unquote. Allow me to describe the stepping up. I made a sign-up sheet for a direct, and then I was modded. Who knows?
We've arrived at the first direct, and I think there are 2 so far.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the very first direct, do you guys have any recollection of, were you basing it on the Nintendo Direct specifically, or around that time, there was Wholesome Direct, I think there was like a couple of other ones, but other indie groups had basically started doing this, where they were putting together kind of like just like a series of trailers based around their community and their theme. Was the conversation sort of like trying to be like, let's do something like that, or was it more like, we just want to do something like what Nintendo's doing?
It's a little bit of both, actually. It was very Nintendo Direct inspired, but we did add a dash of Wholesome Games Direct in there. We really did want to call back to a classic Nintendo Direct. That's where I got the inspiration for the trailer transitions, where there's a piece of paper that slides across the screen and there's like a flipping, like a paper flip sound effect. The core difference is we have our mascot Pepper to narrate it, as opposed to like, a figure at Nintendo or a disembodied voice. We have this little paper spokesperson who speaks on our behalf.
Oh my god, I can't believe I forgot about this. Where did Pepper come from? I wanted to ask.
There is a community member named Some Fool here, and I believe they were the ones who solidified the design of Pepper.
Yeah.
Yep. We had been talking about a mascot for Paperverse for a while, but it was kind of nebulous. I know River wanted to make it a paper crane, and I was like, well, I don't know if I want to do just like a girl. Like, I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, in retrospect, that was wrong. I love Pepper very much. But Some Fool had initially started up drawing ideas of this little paper girl with a hammer that was very Paper Mario inspired, and folks really latched on to that. So that was kind of where she came from. I believe she was made for the direct.
Oh, okay.
She was definitely conceptualized in that late winter, early spring period before the direct aired.
Yeah.
It feels so odd to me that so many people were like, wow, this is amazing, when, for lack of a better term, it kind of feels like a lot of duct tape. Like, Pepper in that is a series of several second clips that I manually did the speaking and pausing for her animation. And like, I voice acted her in the closet of the room that I'm sitting in right now. We made that in 5 months, by the way.
I totally understand. Just kind of making do with what you have.
Yes.
But the results look, honestly fantastic. Was that when things kind of started picking up for the community then, after kind of YouTube got involved?
After that first direct, I was not expecting any of what happened to happen. Nope. We were covered by Game Explain. We were covered by Arlo. We were covered by like all of these YouTubers who like came in and watched live and talked to us. They like quote tweeted us on Twitter and were like, oh my gosh, you have to watch this amazing thing, like check out these games. And for me, that was really proof that we can do these things. So after that, we were like, well, we got to keep going. So we did.
Now we're at Paperverse 2, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, 3 is on the way.
Yes, we are kind of in our off period right now. We usually take a few months after each direct to focus inward on more server-related and administrative affairs, but things will start getting back into gear probably in October here, so coming up soon.
Not that soon.
We're gonna blink and it's gonna be here. So get ready for
it. Paperverse Direct 3 is a collective hallucination.
I mean, what did you guys notice any kind of a leveling up between Paperverse 1 and 2? The second time around, I imagine we're like, all right, we're maybe getting into the rhythm of this. I'd love to hear.
Yeah, the first one for me, it felt like a proof of concept. Like we had this idea, but we had no product to say yes, we could do this or what quality it would be. So once we released that one, I think people were like, okay, Paperverse is not messing around. And that's when we got a lot of new, like, super awesome developer partners. So for the second direct, many of our assets were made by our community members. Like we had Tio made the Pepper's rig and also the paper transitions. We had music done by some fool in May, and just like we had so many more people who were willing to contribute to this because they saw the previous one and were like, okay, like this is a real thing and it's going to happen.
I was just gonna give a special shout out to Jarvis.
Jarvis voiced Pepper. I am by no means a voice actor, so having an actual professional voice actor for our character come in was a huge weight off of my shoulders, and it sounds so much better.
I'm actually really excited. Most people who are probably listening to the repost of this, they don't know, like, normally I would just do this on a Discord one-on-one call with, like, whoever I'm interviewing, but Paperverse invited me to, like, come into their Discord and do it, like, live in one of their channels. So before, when I was doing interviews, I would have, like, a question and answer time, and that was just, like, my joke time to write, like, weird questions that I couldn't fit in anywhere else, and I would pretend to be someone writing in. It was a funny bit, but now there's like actual real people asking questions, which is great.
I kind of want the pretend questions too. Can we do one or two of those at the end?
I can't. I didn't write any. I'm so sorry. So yeah, somebody did ask about the Carrot Dev of Carrots and Courage.
Hello, Richter.
Now the direct has been done a second time and the Paperverse grows. What is the next short-term, middle-term goal for the Paperverse?
A lot of what we do on, like, aside from our social media presence, is aiding developers, and this is something we want to lean into more as we move forward. So we are working on getting a lot of resources ready for our partner developers at Paperverse. We have a website where they can put their games links and description and whatnot, and hopefully folks can find us that way, either from the direct or from Twitter, and I know my game has had traffic from that as well. We are also just trying to get our YouTube channel up into something that's more than an annual presence. Jeeves has been working on some really awesome videos about some of our partnered games here, and there's a really cool video coming up soon, so definitely pay attention to our YouTube channel for that.
One of my goals, now that people have started using the general voice chat, is like to just hang out with people. I feel like the best way I can maintain just an existence here is for having just people hear my voice, hanging out, streaming, game development, or just playing a game, and like sort of just getting to know everyone here.
You see, ASVI gets it in voice text, complete global saturation. That's what we're all about, baby. Let's go.
That should be done by like next month.
For me personally, middle to short-term goals would, again, social media presence, kind of establishing Paperverse as I don't want to say a brand, that's not the right word, but like as a legitimate presence. I guess I'll tell this story, a little bit of a Discord gossip. But when we first started out, this is before the first direct, we were kind of building up to promotional buzz for it. And a community I did reach out to way back when, they didn't want to like really do anything with us because we weren't big enough. And recently, I know I shared it with the mod team, but I reached out again now that we had built up a presence and we had like established what Paperverse is. And it was like a complete 180. They were very, very excited to promote it, and they want to work with us now. And that's just kind of what I want to continue to do, like make Paperverse just legitimate. You are going to see Paperverse, you're going to see our directs, you're going to see all of our development partners' games here, and you're going to like it.
That's actually another thing we want to work on is not just making connections with like game developers, but also like different communities as well, because it's just like good for like, spreading the word.
And Chris will never say this about himself, but he's been doing an amazing job with our original Twitter account. Within like a month, he had got us like 200 new followers on Twitter. which is
damn, I'm
like
jealous.
so many. Yeah, it was insane. He brought in like so many people through Twitter.
Can I hand you my Twitter?
Wow, we
Goddamn.
found your thing.
I think I owe it all to this drawing I made of Pepper.
Oh yes, yes. Can we put that on screen?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. We just hit 7. If there's anything really quickly that like you guys just wanted to add.
I guess for me, the most important distinction for what makes a paper game is, was the developer inspired by Paper Mario? That is the basest way that a game is a paper game, and we accept any and all level of inspiration here, so we're definitely looking for more people all the time.
G, were you gonna say something before?
Oh well, not as awe-inspiring as what Charlie said, but just like a little, I guess people don't really know exactly what it takes to like run communities like these until you actually have to do it. And could show you like our Google Drive, but it's a lot of text documents, Excel spreadsheets. It's like an obscene amount. Like
yeah, moderating is not what you think it is. It's so many documents. Well, I love the people here very dearly, so I am more than happy to do it for them.
Yeah, this place is cool.
Do you got? Well, I mean, on the subject of building a community, this might just take us off in another direction. So forgive me if I unlock that. But do you have any advice that you'd like to share for people who are starting their own community around, around a passion of games? What's something that you learned that you just, you wish somebody had told you?
Get help. And I mean that, like...
Sorry. Go on.
I mean, if you have, like, an idea for something, and even if it's, like, small in scale, it's never a bad idea to ask a friend for help. Odds are that even if you don't think you're going to need help with something, you are. And the more people you have helping, the better. Like, this Paperverse isn't a one-person thing, obviously. There are 4 other people in the call. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. It's a very, like, communal thing where you have... What was I talking about? My God.
Help.
Get help.
Get help.
Yeah, get help.
All right, so Paperverse on Discord, Paperverse on Twitter.
Can't forget one of the most important and newest additions to our repertoire.
Yes.
Would be paperversegames.com, our very own website where you can check up on our development partners, see both directs 2022 and 2021, and just be informed about what Paperverse really is.
I would love if you could wishlist and or check out Lifelike on Steam. That is LIFELIKE. You can also find it on itch, which gives me more money if you purchase it there.
I love it.
And I am also on Twitter at Mantis Studio. That is MNTS Studio.
Same thing for me as well. You can find Tales from Alteria on Steam. I'd love it if you wishlist it. That is TAILS from Alteria, ALTERIA. I'm also on Twitter at Jeeve and Jayla. That's going to be JEEVENJAYLA. And of course, I'm also on the itch.io as well. Same name, Tales from Alteria. Not too hard to find me.
Could I actually say one more thing about Tales from Alteria?
Yeah.
It's having a Kickstarter soon, so keep an eye out for that.
Oh, I buried the lead there.
Yeah, actually,
yeah.
Yeah, I can't believe I forgot about that. Yeah, of course. I'll drop thank you on the pre-launch page is active, so you could follow it to be informed when it actually goes live. So that's very, very handy, and I'd appreciate if you guys did that. It would help so much.